there, this is Popular Stranger, and we are back at you again today with another Madden 21 gameplay video. If you guys missed it, they had a live stream on Twitch tonight featuring Kralo and Clint Oldenburg. I've been putting out a lot of videos focusing on Madden 20 gameplay, 21 gameplay fixes, a bunch of different stuff. This video specifically is going to focus on player personnel packages, out of position players being fatigued, a little bit of an adjustment to that. And we're also going to talk about some changes to abilities. Abilities a big pain point in Madden 20. They are returning for Madden 21, but I think we're going to see a little bit more focus, a little more tuning on that. For the rest of the video, in a moment, I'm going to give my thoughts on this information first. You're going to see footage from the live stream so you can hear it from their voices themselves, see some gameplay footage, see some information about Madden 21. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, or that they're going to talk about, is player personnel packaging. It's going to show different ways from audibling to maybe a formation that has 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and your options to basically audible into other formations that have the same personnel. And I think it's going to limit your options on what you can audible to, so it might prevent people from, coming out in a formation where you can get a wide receiver to play at tight end. That's kind of a cheesy thing that's happened. I don't know if there'll be workarounds. I'm sure people will find a way to do it, but it sounds like it's going to try to keep it balanced in that sense, and I'm cool with that. It gives it a more authentic feel. Speaking of that, we got another thing they're going to talk about is out of position players being fatigued. My apologies there. So if you try to put a wide receiver at halfback, we saw that a lot with competitive Madden this year. If you run Wildcat a lot, if you do a lot of jet sweeps, these players are automatically going to come into the game a little bit more fatigued. Not in the sense that they're tired, but it's going to increase their chance at fumbling. It's just going to prevent people from spamming really cheesy plays that, they might do numerous times throughout a game. So I think that's a great adjustment. And then the last portion of information in this video is going to be centered around abilities, but there's going to be a much bigger discussion about abilities, especially ones from Madden 20 that were very overpowered or people did not like. For this video, they're going to talk about wide receiver routes and how those are going to be changed up a little bit. Very interesting information, so check out that. Coverage on different abilities for defense, and then also different pass lead abilities and how they tune those. More information on abilities coming very soon, but there's some in this. Enjoy the rest of the video. Let me know what you think about it down below in the comment section.
Good stuff. Well, I know what player personnel packaging, players like to be creative, in their formation personnel on offense. I know you guys added some packages and formation subs while using Audibles, and we have some screens specifically to that. I want you to, if you're cool with it, if you want to go ahead and walk us through some of that stuff and talk through it, I'm just going to go ahead and put them up here on the screen while you talk about this specific thing. Again, this is kind of more specific for the hardcore. Your average player probably won't be so involved with this, but this is giving a little bit more control to the players at this time.
Yeah, I have a feeling a lot of our players are really going to like this because it lends itself to more creativity offensively. So our Audibles system is going to be customizable enough that it's going to take into account the actual personnel that you have on the field. And when you change your personnel in the play call menu, either via the packages or the formation subs, all the pre-play audibles that you have available to you is going to be those plays in your playbook that matches that personnel. So if you're using 12 personnel, which is 1 running back and 2 tight ends in a formation like gun empty flex or some, gun spread formation, you want to audible out of that, you're going to be able to audible out of that to any other play in your playbook with 12 personnel, such as single back ace, for example. For now, this feature only applies to the offense. It doesn't apply to the defense, but we are continuing to look for opportunities to expand it to other areas of the game.
Great stuff. So I'm just cycling through these images again for those people that are just checking that out. I'm going to go ahead and start it again. But what Clinton was talking about is player personnel packaging. These are some images. You guys may have not seen these. And again, Clint, thank you so much. I really do appreciate the support of you and your team getting me a build to capture some of this stuff for the community for this stream. I know they always do appreciate a little bit more information outside of what we officially release. So it's just kind of really great to kind of check that stuff out. Let's go ahead and talk about player fatigue for out of position ball carriers. I know this was a thing last year and a frustration point for some players. So let's go ahead and talk about that. I do have a screenshot of that as well, but let's talk about that first.
Yeah, this is another interesting change that is going to introduce the concept of workload management in our game. And the motivation for this change really was one of our biggest detractors from Madden 20 was the rate at which scrambling quarterbacks fumbled. And I was pretty open with our community for years that we had to increase the fumbling, especially on competitive, because there really is no risk to putting your quarterback in harm's way like there is in the real NFL. And while there's still not going to be things like injuries on the competitive side of the game, what this is going to do is start making stamina and fatigue more of a factor. And this feature right here is basically if you are featuring a gadget player as your primary ball carrier, what I mean by a gadget player is anybody whose natural position is not a running back. They are going to start to fatigue much faster, especially on hit sticks and tackles. And as that fatigue kicks in and you keep feeding that player the ball, you're going to see his performance drop. He's going to slow down. He's going to get tired. Eventually, he will start to fumble more as his, as his ratings go down because he's tired. So you're going to want to strategically use those plays. Really what I'm referring to is running things like Wildcat with Tyreek Hill taking the snap, continuously running with our cover athlete, Lamar Jackson, giving him 30 carries a game. It's going to carry some risk. You're going to have to make sure to manage his workload, and in some cases even substitute them out of the game so they can regenerate that stamina.
Good stuff. One of the things I do want to talk about, like last year for Madden 20, it was an abilities year, right? So there was a lot of stuff that went into abilities, and my personal experience has been playing Madden, since Madden 11 is that anytime there's like an introduction of some type of new feature in the game, it takes some time to kind of get an understanding of what's going on, and how players are receiving it and how they're kind of using it. Can we walk through some of the ability improvements that are happening? Because I know that was like a big conversation for a lot of players this year. So if we can go ahead and talk about that. I have some slides over here regarding the ability balancing improvements that we're thinking about doing, if you want to walk through some of those.
Yeah, before we dig in, there's just a few things I want to mention to the community. So first of all, this is not all. There's more. This is just the first bit of information that we're talking about right now. There's more ability information coming very soon, both on abilities from last year and new abilities that we're really excited about. The reason I mention that is because I just want to acknowledge that in the first year that we introduced the ability system, the X Factor Superstars, into our game, we call that game context. And in our first year of game context, we acknowledge that some of them were unbalanced and made the gameplay unbalanced. And we made a conceited effort this year to go after a lot of those abilities and make them better. So I'm going to just talk generally through some of the bigger beats. There's 4 points here we're going to cover. The first two are wide receiver route abilities and coverage defender abilities. So what you saw last year is these abilities were tied to a specific assignment or route, and it really required you to have a carnal knowledge of your playbook. In some cases, you could only use the ability if you had the right hot routes. It made it very hard, but even more than that, it also, they were still active even though you weren't in the correct assignment via hot routes. So instead of tying them to assignments and routes, they're now tied to areas of the field. So last year, as an example, you may have seen slant ability. Now that's going to be like a short outside ability. So it's only going to activate if the spot at which the ball has been thrown to that receiver is under 10 yards and outside the hash marks, say. So those abilities are only going to be active in those specific areas of the field. Happens on offense, like I said, with the wide receiver route abilities, and the same thing on defense with the coverage abilities.
Got it. And I also know you guys did some balancing regarding pass lead abilities.
Yeah, so pass lead abilities from last year were fairly polarizing. They did unlock some abilities to make some amazing plays and throw receivers open, but often they were uncatchable and led too far, and they were out of reach. So in Madden 21, we've actually taken out the increased pass leading on those abilities. Instead, we've replaced it with a velocity enhancement. So when those activate, you're going to get a faster pass that reaches the receiver quicker. And it's going to reduce the ability for defenders to make the play on the ball, especially when you make the correct read on offense. and it should be more powerful for pocket quarterbacks.
Okay, good stuff. So one little note here regarding, we're going to have more news on Superstar X Factors in July, so stay tuned to that. There'll be some information coming out around that time frame. But I want to encourage you guys to make sure to follow at Madden NFL Direct. Also at EA Madden NFL for that information. The main channels are probably going to be sharing a lot of that stuff, but at Madden NFL Direct, for a lot of the people that are here from Good Morning Madden that stay tuned to the show, we'll make sure to go ahead and retweet that information and go ahead and elevate that as well.